Would being beautiful finally fix me? I used to ask myself that a lot as a kid. You see, you're never old enough to know exactly what beauty is, especially not in a culture where you're shown millions of contradictory and impossible standards. But you are always the perfect age to know what makes you ugly, what makes you lazy or unintelligent, what makes you inhuman. Would being beautiful finally fix me? Many of us imagine our bodies being broken down, ground into dust, and resculpted, like Pandora or Eve, into perfect desirability. We want to be loved, accepted, wanted, even if that means relinquishing our very personhood. Would being beautiful fix me? Will I still be me by the end of it, or is the project at hand someone different? Change is good, but when did change become the total annihilation of self? When did the better version of me become not me at all? The desire for beauty in the age of technological capitalism does not stop with the face or body. We are living in a culture of fatal self-optimization, churning towards perfection in every industry by any means necessary. From our brains to our homes to our routines and to our tech, our existence is mediated by machines. Our identity is puppeteered by an unseen algorithm. Is it divine intervention we seek? A relinquishing of control? Or does our desire point towards a hunger for freedom? In this video, I'm going to look at a few iconic pop culture pieces that deal with beauty and identity, interrogating all the while what it means to lose yourself in the age of technology. What happens when our appetite for beauty meets fear? When identity becomes disconnected? When the preternatural becomes familiar and we collapse under the weight of beautiful exhaustion? Let's look closer. My bad. Today's portion of the video is sponsored by ThredUp, an online consignment and thrift store. I know that's a big word for Elmo. That just means they sell secondhand items. Now, secondhand has a bit of a negative connotation for some reason, which doesn't make sense to me because I love old clothes. But even so, ThredUp has a wide variety of high quality products, including designer brands and items that come in new with tags. I've thrifted for most of my life because it was usually the most affordable option for me and my family. I also find thrifting to be more intentional than fast fashion. You have to really understand your style before thrifting because most shops don't cater to larger trends. ThredUp is a good asset in that regard because they are online, and so it's easier to search for specific secondhand items compared to in stores. Their filters and improved search help narrow down the inventory so you can find exactly what it is that you're looking for. Say you're into dark academia and you only wear 100% cotton. You can toggle the material filter or type in your keywords into the search bar, and voila. Because the items are secondhand, they stay in consumer rotation, meaning they're given a longer life cycle than typical fast fashion. I'm not the first consumer to touch and wear this sweater, and I think that's really cool. Who knows what life it has lived so far. This sweater is vintage, I believe, from Baxter and Wells, and is 100% wool, perfect for the non-existent North Carolina fall. The estimated retail is $32, but I got it for $5.70. I'm a big fan of midi skirts and the color brown, obviously, and so I also picked up this Jones New York signature skirt. It's 100% cotton, period. The estimated retail price is $85, but I got it for $21.99. Lastly, you might recognize a pattern here, but I got this Coach wristlet in pretty good condition, brown, of course. The estimated retail price was $83, but I got it for $23.79. I really like this bag and it holds everything I need it to. You too can shop hundreds of brands for a fraction of the price, all in one place. Tap my link and use code SHANSPEAR50 to shop my ThredUp faves and receive 50% off your first order, plus free shipping. Thank you to ThredUp for helping me keep my lights on. And now, back to the video. Let's define a few things so that we're all on the same page. When someone uses the term technology, especially in a derogatory sense, they're usually referring to digital technology. Smartphones, algorithms, the internet, me. But technology is everything. It simply refers to the practical application of knowledge. Writing tools are a form of technology. Someone had to figure out how to make paper and ink and something to hold the ink on to transfer it onto the paper. Someone had to figure out momentum and gravity and energy and figure out how they work together in order to create bikes. Someone had to figure out clocks.
You're not getting it. It's not clocking to you.
And that someone was not Justin Bieber. The technological examples I'm going to use in this video are artificial intelligence, mass media, and mass production. You know, like after industrialization, when we started making like a bunch of stuff in mass. That's what I'm referring to. That's my limit, but it doesn't have to be yours. My definition of artificial intelligence is more broad. Not only will I reference public enemy number one, that is generative AI, but also algorithms, cyborgs, and even mythological creation like Pandora being created out of clay by Greek gods, and Eve being made from Adam's rib bone. I'm referring to creation that seems unnatural to how we understand humans, and more so, human creation. More specifically, it's an act of creation that depends on some loss of agency, creating beautiful, perfect people against their will, usually for your own gain, but especially for their loss. Lastly, there's beauty. When I say beauty, I don't mean just facial or bodily aesthetics, though that applies too. I mean total optimization, where everything you touch has to be as perfect as possible. Housekeeping over.
I mean, all this physical beauty business is painful if you have to do what you do now, which is cut yourself up in little bits.
Most of us have no idea of the pain it causes people because the society and the culture and the media and the magazines and the television and all the commercials bombard them with what it is to be attractive. And they define attractiveness in our culture, and they find what's good and what's bad. So that all of a sudden, if you don't look like that, you say, I don't like myself.
Oh,
how do I go change myself?
It's death. It's interior death. You never have an opportunity to develop what's really valuable, which is grace, balance, health, virtue, all those good things that each of us can be. But now, if you're going to worry about hair and skin color, how tall you are and how short. I mean, I don't mean that self-esteem is not bound up in some of these things, but I'm talking about obsessive.
Self-esteem is bound up in everything.
Yeah, we're sure. Yeah, it is.
The Bluest Eye was Toni Morrison's first ever novel, published in her 30s, and born out of a self-guided need to explore beauty, identity, and fear as it relates to young Black girls. It takes place in the 1940s, right before the end of World War II, and long after industrialization. The girls at the center of the story, Claudia, her sister Frida, and their friend Piccola, are terrorized by the ubiquitous existence of products. Products which influence and, at times, take ownership of their identity. They're watched closely by the cherubic face of Shirley Temple, printed onto a cobalt blue mug. They're burdened by gifts of pink-skinned baby dolls, tortured socially by the clear demarcation between them, poor dark black, and the likes of Maureen Peel, a high yellow dream child who owns new clothes, who brings to school expensive lunches, and who is, by default, loved by everyone. Through these interactions, the girls are taught the politics of beauty. They learn what and who is beautiful, and they must reckon with the fact that they are not. Piccola especially is jarred by this knowledge. She hopes, against the sensibility of beauty itself, that she will one day wake up with bright blue eyes. These eyes would carry her up and away from her destructive life, away from her fighting parents, her abusive father, away from the white people who look through her and the Black people who degrade her. The Bluest Eye is not a story of wish fulfillment. Despite Piccola's delusions at the end of the book, she does not receive blue eyes. She is not liberated from the concept of ugliness, nor is she saved by a literal white knight. Instead, she collapses silently anonymously, with no voice to express or acknowledge her collapsing. She disappears into an unforgiving world, and it doesn't bat an eye at her extermination. The Bluest Eye is also a novel about autonomy, or a perceived lack thereof, especially when it comes to systematically oppressed peoples. It seeks to ask, who gets to decide what's beautiful? And why is it never us? In the 2007 foreword written by Morrison, she explains that Pacola's collapsing is written to be extreme, right? But it's still honest. It still speaks to the anxieties and trauma that people, especially young Black girls, endure in this world, which in its language, laws, and images reinforces despair, end quote. Pacola is tortured by her eyes and all that they have seen. The terror, the hatred, but especially the beauty. Beauty which has been put onto strings and mastered by some unnameable force. Beauty which torments and evades them. Claudius states, "If Maureen Peale was cute, then we were not. We were lesser. Dolls we could destroy, but we could not destroy the honey voices of parents and aunts, the obedience in the eyes of our peers, the slippery light in the eyes of our teachers when they encountered the Maureen Peales of the world. The thing to fear was the thing that made her beautiful, and not us." It's not just the children in the Bluest Eye who grapple with feeling ugly or alien. Pacola's mother talks about how she was introduced to physical beauty through movies. I think Toni Morrison writes that it's the most destructive thing ever invented, physical beauty. Through these films, Pauline was taught white supremacist aesthetics and patterns of patriarchal thought, and she compared herself to them endlessly. There, the black and white images came together, making a magnificent whole. Them images gave me a lot of pleasure, but it made coming home hard. And then, while she was watching the movie, she bit into a candy bar, and away came her tooth. I remember one time I went to see Clark Gable and Jean Harlow. I fixed my hair up like I had seen hers on a magazine. A part on the side with one little curl on my forehead. It looked just like her. Well, almost just like. There I was, 5 months pregnant, trying to look like Jean Harlow, and a front tooth gone. Everything went then. I let my hair go back, plaited it up, and settled down to just being ugly. Like her daughter, Pauline found herself seduced and then fatally wounded by the images, laws, and language of the world. A fate that Bell Hooks argues is imminent if we are not constantly critical or vigilant of what we consume. Most interesting to me is the ending of this book. There's a conversation between Pacola and an imaginary friend, which is really her subconscious. At this point in the book, Pacola has already been terribly traumatized and is pregnant with her father's child. This is something that her subconscious acknowledges, but she does not. Her mind has broken down the middle. She believes that her wish has finally been fulfilled, that she now has beautiful blue eyes. But then doubt begins to creep in. Are her eyes beautiful? Are they bluer than everyone else's eyes? Does she have the bluest eyes in the whole world? Is she finally fixed? This is interesting to me because it speaks to the never-ending cycle of beauty and optimization. When you achieve one goal, it's quickly soured by the fear that you must achieve greater. All your attention, all of your energy turns toward becoming perfect with no end in sight. I know from experience. TikTok. Ooh, TikTok. I recently had to delete TikTok. Not because I had some grand reckoning with the earth, aka touching grass, but because I was being inundated with non-stop optimization content. I was surrounded by images, seduced by language, and all of it told me that I was not enough. That if I just pruned this one aspect about myself, I could become perfect. Either it's a flaw of the system or it's intentionally orchestrated, but I never ran out of things to change. There was always a new thing I could enhance or make go away. always a final nail to add in my old self's coffin. This isn't uniquely a TikTok problem. I've talked about that in past chapters, such as the one titled, Our Obsession with Beauty is Dystopian. It's a culture problem. Our fear of being ugly, whether that be bodily or lifestyle-based, is the reason why self-help gurus and beauty coaches are so popular on social media. It's why they're drowned in book sales and lauded as the saviors of entire generations. Olay recently published a video essay on lookism and how ugly people are treated in our society. If you haven't already watched that, I highly recommend it. I think it's a great companion piece to this video in that it grounds the reality of why people are so obsessed or adamant about being beautiful. This obsession doesn't just fall out of a coconut tree. People are desperate to curate a beautiful existence by any means necessary because they know what will happen if they don't. They know what will happen to them if they're considered ugly or lazy or unsuccessful. It's a wicked sense of self-preservation, one that definitely does not always pay out, and one that becomes quickly oppressive in of itself. But we can't deny that being beautiful in every sector of life is a form of currency. In a capitalist consumerist culture, that matters. The world doesn't run on Dunkin', baby. It runs on capital. Every waking moment, we are told there is something missing from our lives. A key, immutable violation that makes us alien on a planet where everyone else has their shit together. We are the only ones in the pillory. We are the only ones on trial. And that's not true, but that's the lie our culture feeds. You are uniquely and disgustingly wrong. You should do something about it, eh? TikTok was especially important to my miseducation because I was spending hours on that thing. Y'all be so convinced that I watch YouTube. I barely touched this app. Maybe I was over on TikTok getting terrorized by hot takes and beauty influencers. I was never satisfied by what I was seeing, but I couldn't let go. I became convinced that every aspect of my life, from my body to my face to my career to my knowledge to my daily life, second by second, needed this one new thing, this pricey, extravagant cure to a problem I didn't even know I had. Maybe if I buy this $400 blow dryer, my life will finally be worth living. Maybe if I wear makeup at the house and not just when I go out in public, I'll finally have my life together. And of course, if I do wear makeup 24/7, well, I need to buy more stuff on top of that to maintain my skin and newfound beauty. I need 14 body lotions and scents and custards and glitter and buffers, or else I should just die. I became convinced of this content. I saved it all to a folder that I named Leveling Up. Getting better. Girl, go read a book. Get off your phone. Go look at a tree and feel how small you are compared to it, and then go think about the size of the earth and how absolutely finite you are as an asset. Clock's ticking.
You're not getting it. It's not clocking to you.
Obviously, you're allowed to like whatever you like, and buying a singular body oil or whatever doesn't make you evil. I'm talking about my own obsession with changing things about myself to the point where I got tunnel vision. I couldn't live with myself. Every moment that I was me was another moment wasted. If the holy grail I was being fed wasn't viable, I knew I was expected to spend time and attention on it instead. I had to terrorize my body by counting calories and working myself to exhaustion. I have to start 14 new brain-beginning hobbies to remain interesting in culture to some unnamed viewer of my performance. I need to read 100 nonfiction books by the end of the month, and I need to wake up at 4 a.m. to maximize my productivity. Around every dark corner, self-optimization reared its head. The content I was consuming didn't mention how draining it would be to keep up with all of this. People beyond my screen looked perfect all of the time, and so I assumed they just existed like that, constantly beautiful and put together. I'm nothing like that in real life. The language used in self-optimization content is also dehumanizing. You should treat your life like a business. Invest in yourself, maximize your success, become a machine. Self-care stops being about pampering oneself or being gentle with oneself, and instead becomes taking care of oneself. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. As if you're a hitman disposing of a tedious problem. The chaotic pressure of self-optimization is fueled by technocapitalism, and what Guy Debord— oh fuck, I can't find the picture, oh fuck. Wait a second. The chaotic pressure of self-optimization is fueled by technocapitalism, and what Guy Debord calls the spectacle. In this Substack essay, Dio defines technocapitalism as the fusion of digital technologies and capitalistic frameworks, where technology serves not only as a tool, but as a primary driver of economic growth and consumer behavior. If you're a regular Shakespeare viewer, which, in that case, hi, you like me or something? You might remember our talks about big data. Companies like Meta, TikTok, and Google, which includes YouTube, commodifies our digital interactions. They collect data from us and find loopholes to sell it to other companies. This is why you can view a product on your laptop, close the website, open Instagram on your phone, and see a targeted ad for that same product. It's not just because Mark Zuckerberg is in your walls, though. I do see him back there. Girl, don't turn around. By pushing us down data holes, showing us targeted ads, and determining what content gets seen and what gets sent to the shadow realm, these major tech companies get to act as architects of our consumer and personal identity. That ties back to a major theme of this video. Our identity is being constructed artificially and often against our will, whereas the bluest eye shows this occurring as a result of physical products and films. In this case, it's happening as a result of digital technology. Dio argues that this practice is especially hard on marginalized groups. Digital tools have been sold as a very unique fantasy, where they're supposed to mirror you and your reality. However, algorithms favor very specific groups, none of which include the disabled, the neurodivergent, the lower class, the non-white, the trans, or, as TikTok once admitted, the ugly. What happens when you don't see yourself reflected back in this so-called mirror? You convince yourself that there's something intrinsically wrong with you. You document everything you think you lack, and then you attempt to conform. In more extreme cases, you collapse in on yourself, like Nicola Breedlove. Dio states, "This hidden digital influence aligns with corporate interests, often filtering out content that deviates from normative ideals. Platforms are custodians of the internet that subtly guide users towards conformity through content moderation and algorithmic design, resulting in representation that serves techno-capitalist objectives rather than authentic visibility." Before the Joker, Guy Debord was the one to quote when you talked about living in a society. Debord, in his 1967 book, Society of the Spectacle, critiques the ways in which post-war capitalism has collapsed our culture. Sorry, when I think about we live in a society, I think of that epic rap battles of history. It was the Joker versus Pennywise.
This is Earth, you space demon. We live in a society.
Yeah, pretty much. Okay. Anyways, our lives have become mediated by the spectacle, aka visuals and images that are associated with capitalist and consumer culture. Guy Debord doesn't really specify beyond that what the spectacle is, as he mainly focuses on what it does. But he does mention that mass media is just one of its many arms. Think back to the bluest eye, and how Piccola's mother, Pauline, was seduced by images, aka movies. The beauty of these images dulled her reality and made coming home hard. Nothing could compare to the spectacle. Pauline's dilemma is exactly what Debord was critiquing, especially because he existed in a culture that was dominated by the television. But because the target of his criticism is so vague, his theory is able to stretch past its original bounds. Debord died in 1994, self-induced. He never technically experienced a smartphone or let alone TikTok, but that's exactly what scholars reference when talking about the spectacle today. I would argue that techno-capitalism and the spectacle go hand in hand, if they're not the same thing entirely. Debord uses Marxist theories such as commodity fetishism, which we've talked about a lot on this channel, and alienation to get his point across. He argues that capitalism separates us from ourselves and from each other. The only way we feel connected is through working or buying products. And even then, it's a very secondary relationship. Our relationship with our identity and with other people is mediated by a third party, aka the spectacle. For Dio, that spectacle is big data and social media platforms. If Debord was alive today, he might feel the same way. Tiernan, Morgan et al. Argue Debord would no doubt have been horrified by social media companies such as Facebook and Twitter, which monetize our friendships, opinions, and emotions. Our internal thoughts and experiences are now commodifiable assets. Everywhere we look, we are saturated with products, ads, screens, discourse, celebrity, and entertaining chaos. We're promised that the existence of just one of these things, or even all of them, will solve our life's issue. It will make us prettier, smarter, friendlier, trendier, until the next thing comes along. The next dying star, crumbling under the pressure of the universe that we look upon with hopeful skepticism, going, is it finally time? Will I be fixed? The spectacle exists as incessant chatter in the background of our everyday life. It's a reminder that we are not whole, and yet we tend to accept this spectacular intrusion. We passively wear the mask it provides. We're soothed by the spectacle, lulled into a false sense of complacency, so that we never revolt, never question, never think for ourselves. It reminds me of the bread and circuses quote originating from the Roman poet Juvenal. We get our food, we get our celebrity death matches, and we're satiated long enough to ignore how the empire is crumbling beneath our feet. It always has been, but pay it no mind.
Who are you?
Oh, I am the great and powerful Wizard of Oz.
We have political circuses and social media circuses and thought circuses. We even have circuses about circuses and circuses about bread. Carefree Wandering describes it like this.
Life is a show. And second, this show is for profit. It's a business.
The question is, whose show is it? And who receives the profit? Appearance is also major to the spectacle and, therefore, to our culture. Debord argues that representation of something means more to us than the reality of it. For instance, a product's branding means more to us than its quality or its use value. Luxury brands can get away with producing average or subpar items because people don't buy the products for longevity or practicality. They buy it because it adds something to their image. It makes them appear wealthy or trendy, even if that's not at all what they actually are. The signifier of the product, the social image that it has, overshadows the actual thing itself. Under the spectacle, being is replaced by having, and having is replaced by appearing. We no longer live, we aspire. Technocapitalism and the spectacle is integral to our understanding of beauty exhaustion in the age of technology. Beauty is mediated by images and machines. The spectacle in particular has numbed our minds to the politics of desire, so much so that we engage with desirability uncritically, reproducing and reinforcing its harm. Toni Morrison said that the bluest eye didn't have as much of an impact as she would have hoped. People were touched by the story, but not moved. One problem was centering the weight of the novel's inquiry on so delicate and vulnerable a character could smash her and lead readers into the comfort of pitying her rather than into an interrogation of themselves for the smashing. There was no rush to examine desire or desirability, no rush to question the ways in which ugly people are systemically disappeared. Audiences were touched, but not moved to implement critical change, not in themselves and not in the system. Beauty optimization culture has also become appearance-based. That is, it's not based in reality, but is instead an abstract representation. Olay mentions in her video that beauty is not a matter of fact, meaning what makes someone beautiful is not rooted in tangible, scientific reality for the most part. It's rooted in our culture's abstract standards, which could very well change at any moment. When I watch content centered around perfecting one's life, it almost feels as though the goal is to project that perfection rather than to embody it. I wasn't acting on the beauty tips I saved to my TikTok folder. I let them build up. I contemplated them. Life, mediated by the spectacle, is not meant to be lived, but curated. It's not meant to feel good, it's meant to look good. Life moves away from reality into mere representation. Debord argues, the more the spectator contemplates, the less he lives. The more he accepts recognizing himself in the dominant images of need, the less he understands his own existence and desires. The more his life is now his product, the more he is separated from his life. Agony. Is this hellscape what Shakespeare had in mind? Is all the world truly a stage where representation triumphs over reality? All the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances. It's all for show and it's all for business. Death and mere oblivion. You know what they say? The show must go down in a passionate display of revolution and rage. And all will be fine because it's not your show. It's not your profit. You have nothing to lose but your chains. It's toe time. No Tarantino. For those of you unaware, I run a free newsletter on Substack where I write a little bit about a video topic ahead of posting, and my subscribers submit their opinions via email. Everyone is so smart and so vulnerable in that community, and it really means a lot to me. So let's see what we got this month. The first letter reads, earlier this year I read Go Tell It on the Mountain by James Baldwin and The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison back to back. They both jutted their finger at me and seemed to say, do you see? Can you see what you've neglected to look at in yourself before? In Go Tell It on the Mountain, only a passing sentiment, African-American Aunt Florence applies expensive bleaching cream, believing her husband doesn't want a coal-black woman. In The Bluest Eye, Pecola wishes she had blue eyes. She adores white dolls and the image of Shirley Temple on a cup. Both initially made me sorrowful. They wished to look different when they were already beautiful. This was then followed by a clinching realization that I, too, unconsciously feel what Aunt Florence and Pecola feel, even as a mixed white British Chinese girl. Every time I apply sun cream, I think about how this will maybe make me tan less. This is my Aunt Florence. When we were very young, my white British grandmother would point out the differences in our coloring to hers. Whenever she mentions the pale skin, blonde hair, blue eyes of our cousins, my Asian mother resents it. Of course, my children cannot have blue eyes. This is my Pecola. The remarkable thing is that this all can be private, even to ourselves. It can happen to us without our knowing. I wasn't aware of what was inside my own self until Baldwin and Morrison showed it to me. Perhaps all I mean to say is that some beauty standards are simply impossible to attain for some people. This means that these standards cannot be innately beautiful. We must have given them the badge of beauty. There is more that we should give this badge to. The next letter reads, I am no exception to wanting to be perceived by others as beautiful and smart and accomplished. But when I think back to the time I was in active pursuit and how it was never coming from a place of genuinely wanting to feel better, I can't help but think, at what cost? Who am I performing for? Does any of this matter if I'm still miserable? These ideals of a perfect life or being this ideal woman is sold on a platform designed to make you too tired and dopamine addicted to go out and achieve it. The next letter reads, beauty has always been this appealing thing that the mind sees as hyper-mutable, that, in a sense, we can be easily changed in our minds to fit this ruling narrative of beauty, whatever it may be. My body is steady. It is a living, breathing thing that takes time to adapt and change, and it holds all the memories of the practices done to implement that change. I think technology mirrors our mind's shallow idea of beauty as a figment, an imaginary ideal in which we are effortlessly expressing utter beauty, and it's a lie. The next letter reads, since leaving social media behind, I realized that I had forgotten how humans look. Regardless of how close to the beauty standard someone is, they will always look different on camera. Besides the obvious image editing and filters, the camera itself is limited because it only engages your eyes and ears. You will never compare to the 2D representations of people in your phone because you experience yourself with so much more depth. When Instagram was my base for how people look and behave, I felt alien. Since interacting with people in the world without that bias, I finally feel human again. The next letter reads, overall, I feel like it's about conformity. The strive to fit in because being different or ugly is punished. But that desire for conformity fuels consumerism and honestly a lack of identity. For example, there's a creator I watch for gym vibes, but all her videos are just iterations of resetting your life. It's like, girl, how many times do you need to reset? Is the routine not working? If you look at the overall catalog, ironically, it's like someone who actually can't get their life together because they're constantly resetting. And it's like, what's more attractive to watch? A video about getting your life together, or a video about someone whose life is together? Or are these optimal routines actually not that sustainable? The last letter reads, as a trans-masc person, I have a complicated relationship with the idea of beauty. As a kid, I wasn't doing it well enough. As a grown person now, I'm not allowed to have it at all, or else I'm not seen as a real man. And as an overweight person, there's an extra element of knowing I might not be accepted as a beautiful person, even if I were a cisgender woman. Everywhere on social media, there's a push to look better. Don't you want to lose a few pounds? Don't you want to look as good as they do? Sometimes I realize I don't. Not really, and sometimes that fact makes me ashamed. Being overweight and okay with it, being trans and thriving, these are things I'm not supposed to do. I feel as if I'm supposed to justify my joy. If I were to give advice to my younger self, or hell, anyone who's in a similar boat, I would say to remember how good it feels to not give in. There is real, true joy in being who you are with no apologies. There is a life to be found that is only for you and whoever you choose to share it with. For all the ways we critically analyze the Stepford Wives, as a political commentary, as a feminist manifesto, or as a co-opt of the second wave movement, Levin asserts that the book bloomed from a rather simple desire to create a really good thriller. Stepford Wives was published just 2 years after The Bluest Eye. Both books share similar themes of beauty and identity, but diverge on the lens through which the theme is explored. As we've seen, The Bluest Eye is a commentary on the world through the eyes of a young black girl. The Stepford Wives, on the other hand, centers the middle-class experience, following closely, some have argued, with the politics of second-wave feminism. Levin's novel has been compared heavily to Betty Friedan's 1963 work, The Feminine Mistake, which also focuses on white, middle to upper-class feminism. The Stepford Wives does attempt subtly to grapple with the ways in which white supremacy, patriarchy, and capitalism intersect. The novel follows Joanna Eberhardt, her husband Walter, and their 2 kids. An all-American nuclear family who moves away from the awful, crime-ridden, diverse city to the quaint, idyllic, white town of Stepford, Connecticut. It's a classic tale of white flight. Beginning in earnest in the 1940s, again the time that Bluest Eye was set, white families moved rapidly from the city and into secluded, white-only suburbs. This practice ramped up in the 50s and 60s before waning in the 70s, but it never officially ended. Stepford would be the perfect place to flee, since at the time of Joanna's arrival, there are no non-white residents. When a black family does finally move in, the subsequent white discomfort is palpable. Ruth Ann, a member of that family, must confront the covert racism of her new white neighbors, as well as the possibility of her husband's violent patriarchal desires. Let's break down the narrative. No, I need that. Wait. Joanna is the main character of the novel. She is a proud liberal feminist and a member of the National Organization for Women. Her understanding of gender and family roles are immediately challenged in Stepford. The husbands want nothing to do with her woke nonsense. I mean, you can't even hate women anymore because of woke. They congregate in a Gothic Victorian mansion up on the hill of Stepford. The Men's Association, they call it. No girls allowed. Joanna thinks the entire club is archaic, but the wives of Stepford are accepting, encouraging even, of their own exclusion. There's an immediate uncanny nature that Joanna notes with these women. They're inhumanely perfect, nearly mechanical. They have beautiful shampoo commercial hair and magazine-worthy figures that they maintain around the house with garters and shapewear. Every time Joanna tries to engage with her neighbors, they blow her off. Girl, we don't got time for that. There's too much cleaning left to do, they say. And Bob's wardrobe isn't going to iron itself. It's almost like the sole purpose of the wives in Stepford is to wait upon their husbands, home, and children, and look like bombshells while doing it. I'm sure the clone I keep in my basement who does my editing is using footage from the 1975 adaptation as B-roll for this segment. But it's really funny to note that Ira Levin did not fuck with that movie, okay? He was on the director's ass like back pockets. Not only did the movie completely nix Ruth Ann's character from the narrative, showing her for all of 3 seconds at the very end, even though the book at least gives her 5 goddamn pages. But the costuming in the movie was also a sore spot for Levin. The book is a commentary on gender politics and autonomy. Every facet of the cyborg wives' existence is controlled by their patriarchal masters. While the floor-length milkmaid dresses and conservative tradwife fashion makes sense as a critique of Christian-based patriarchal purity politics, Levin imagined something different, more male-gazy. If he had it his way, the camera and the men would be leering at a near-naked woman who has no control over her body, her clothing, or her existence. Get thee to a hot pants factory, or whatever it is Hamlet said. The men, on the other hand, would have full control over their bodies and their clothes, and would therefore most likely not be wearing snazzy suits. The dichotomy would look more like that meme of Justin and Hailey Bieber. Both concepts make sense to me, but I can see why Levin started a decades-long beef about it. Joanna describes the Stepford wives as actresses putting on a performance rather than real people living life. An interesting callback to debord's theory of appearance. Joanna feels immediately out of place in her new home. She feels alien, unwomanly. Her friend Bobby, one of the only other human women in Stepford, tells her that there must be some sort of mustard gas affecting the wives in town, or a haywire hormone that makes them so perfect. That would explain the fantastic boobs, says Bobby. You've got to have noticed. I sure have. I feel pre-adolescent every time I set foot in the market, Joanna replies. The Stepford wives become a springboard by which Joanna and Bobby bounce themselves off of, trying to make sense of their own identity. This exhausting back and forth is reminiscent of Pecola and Pauline from The Bluest Eye. It speaks to the timeless and insidious nature of the spectacle and technocapitalism. Like those of us today, each character is terrorized by some form of technology that reinforces unobtainable yet aspirational beauty standards. The Stepford Wives is a reckoning with the double. As we come to find out, the women in town are actually audio animatronics, aka talking robots, created by Dale Koba, the president of the Stepford Men's Association and a former engineer for Disneyland. He was there with that head, I see you. After moving to Stepford with their families, the women are murdered one by one, with the full consent of their husbands, and are replaced with beautiful, lifelike clones. These clones are patriarchal wet dreams, designed by Ike Mazard, yet another Stepford resident and member of the Men's Association. As it so happens, Ike is also a magazine illustrator. He draws highly unrealistic, beautiful women. He's a cog in the ever-churning machine that plants insecurities in people's heads. Joanna tells Ike, "I'm not sure I like you. You blighted my adolescence with those dream girls of yours." But he tells her not to worry. Her youthful identity may have been disrupted by his unrealistic standards of femininity, but here in Stepford, everyone's a Ike Mazard girl. He proceeds to draw Joanna a portrait, which she notes is much more beautiful than she actually is. Yet another reference to the theory of appearance. Reality is muted in favor of abstract representation. Bobby, who receives her own drawing, states, "Boy, I wish I looked half this good." It's easy to assume that Ike Mazard's drawings end up being used as a blueprint for the cyborg engineers. I think that's a direct callback to the theme of this video, that is artificial creation against one's own will that is influenced by these grand images of beauty. The Ira Levin website created a breakdown of the novel for its 50th anniversary titled Building Stepford Wives. The guide makes an interesting point that the double commentary goes beyond the patriarchal violence facing the women. As a photographer, Joanna plays into the act of creating idealistic representations of people, doubles, essentially, often without the consent of her muse. Before she moves from the city, for instance, Joanna takes a candid picture of a black man. He's hailing a cab, which ultimately drives past him. It's a bleak moment of racism, caught on her camera, but Joanna thinks nothing of it. She flattens the experience, flattens him. She strips the man of his humanity altogether and thinks only of her own desires. If his expression enlarged well, she thought, and if she darkened the background to bring up the blurred cab, it could be an arresting picture, one she was sure the agency would be willing to handle. There were plenty of markets for pictures dramatizing racial tensions. It's such a simple moment, one that feels normal in the grand scheme of the narrative, but it's also a telling moment. Joanna takes steps to edit or beautify the picture, making it more attractive to potential buyers. She's willing to circumvent this black person's agency, use his personhood with no credit or consent, all for her own gain. She eagerly reproduces what she herself finds archaic when committed against her in Stepford, though that's obviously to a more extreme degree. The guide argues, what are we to make of the fact that, at the same time Joanna wants social equity for herself, she's okay capitalizing on the unjust status quo that sees this man left standing on the street corner? Every time a woman disappears for a weekend, she comes back different. Joanna notices this first with her friend Charmaine and then with her friend Bobby. Their explanations are all the same. Yes, I've changed. I realized I was being awfully sloppy and self-indulgent. I decided to be more careful about my appearance. In the 1975 adaptation, when we meet cyborg Bobby for the first time, she's wearing makeup and fancy clothes around the house, something that human Bobby never did. Cyborg Bobby calls her human self a slob and states that, I just want to look like a woman. Heavy implications there. Joanna tries to warn Walter about her husband, by the way. I know I haven't mentioned him much, but Joanna tries to warn Walter about these sudden changes in her friends, only to be talked off the ledge. It wouldn't hurt you to look in a mirror once in a while yourself, he states. The criticism strikes Joanna, planting a small seed of doubt. There's real self-consciousness in her voice when she asks, do you want me to change too? Like in The Bluest Eye, The Stepford Wives is a contemplation of what it means to be made perfect in the image of beauty. And by whom? How far are we, or our so-called masters, willing to go for beauty? In the 1975 adaptation, Joanna is killed by her cyborg double, whereas in the book, it's implied that cyborg Bobby kills her. This creative difference adds a new flair to the commentary. Not only are the women of Stepford dying by the hands of patriarchal white supremacist men, but the women are literally killing themselves to become a mythic ideal. It echoes my earlier sentiments of fatal self-optimization. We are willing, or forced in the case of Joanna, to do ourselves real harm in order to embody a script written by someone else. Anna Silver argues, during the climactic scene in which Joanna confronts her double, she represents all those women who are trapped by a feminine mystique that, in this case, literally kills women. Especially considering that cyborg Joanna strangles human Joanna with a pair of pantyhose, which Silver argues clearly symbolizes the constricting norms of femininity. A little on the nose, but LOL. The Stepford Wives can also be read as an allegory for our fear of technology, and a prophetic critique of artificial intelligence, especially in relation to beauty culture. I'm sure you've already seen men on Twitter who believe that sexy AI images will someday replace the need for human women, which is obviously dehumanizing and misogynistic, but all around just confusing. It's pixels on a screen, bro. It's not even sentient. It's trained by actual human beings. But maybe that just goes back into the dehumanization aspect. Some men don't view women as people, so pixels on a screen is not that much of a difference to them. Joanna, through her death and replacement with a robot, will be reborn as a more perfect woman, no longer the biological offspring of a mother and father, but the product of a group of men. Joanna has no say in her own creation. Like Eve or Pandora, she is pulled from the earth by an unseen force and made malleable underneath its hands. Silver continues. The men of Stepford find the robots more beautiful than they do their human wives. Unlike women, robots do not age, wrinkle, or gain weight. In addition to the submissiveness at the heart of the robot's attractiveness to the Stepford men, the robots enact, in grotesque exaggeration, the cultural desire to keep the body in perfect discipline. This reminds me of a book I recently read called Comfort Me with Apples. I won't give away too much just in case you want to read it, but the narrative follows a woman who was quite literally constructed for her husband. She has to maintain perfect patriarchal femininity, staying thin, staying submissive, and staying under control. She refers to herself as a machine designed to return to its master, time and time again. There's definitely some comparisons to be made with this book and Debord's Spectacle. I can't tell you how without ruining the plot, but just think of the title, Comfort Me with Apples. The main character is given all of these glamorous things that serve as a distraction or a comfort from her reality. But back to the Stepford Wives. The 1975 adaptation is 50 years old and counting, but can easily be applied to today's reckoning with AI.
What do you think they do up there?
Watch dirty movies and reminisce about the good old days.
Like those good old days when Playboy used the airbrush.
Stick a pin in this scene for a moment. We'll return in a second. In Saving Beauty, which I don't have a puppet for, my bad, Byung-Chul Han argues that our culture considers smoothness an aesthetic value. With the body, we obsess over shaving, waxing, and plucking ourselves free of hair. With the face, we focus on pore-removing creams and wrinkle-reducing serums. But it goes even further than that. Our quest for smoothness is integral to total optimization. From our relationships, to our art, to our lifestyles. Smoothness is synonymous with positivity and conformity. It signifies a lack of obstruction. What is smooth does not injure, nor does it offer any resistance. We want everything in our lives to be perfectly smooth. Dare to peek into any social media comment section. People don't like to be challenged. We don't want complication or duplicity or negativity, even when it's healthy, even when it's human. We only desire comfortable, smooth sailing, a type of stifling control. The smooth adapts to the observer, elicits a like from him or her. All it wants is to please and not to knock over. Aestheticization turns out to be anestheticization. It sedates our perception. This sounds similar to The Spectacle, right? We don't want to reckon with hard truths or the bumpy nature of our reality. We want to be lulled, seduced, and comforted by appearance rather than shaken by the truth. Under our culture of smooth, the ugly even becomes smooth. The ugly loses the negativity of the diabolical, of the uncanny and terrifying, and is smoothened out, a formula for consumption and enjoyment. Han's section on smoothness immediately reminded me of generative AI, not only because people use it to avoid challenging tasks or because it sedates our perception, but mainly because with generative AI specifically, the images are weirdly smooth, right? They lack depth and friction. To some people, however wrong they may be, this is beautiful. So back to this scene. Bobby tells Joanna that the Men's Association probably sits around in their Victorian mansion reminiscing on the good old days, that being when Playboy used the airbrush filter and the models were inhumanely smooth. This isn't just a throwaway line. It's foreshadowing for the discovery of the robots, and is further enhanced by the fact that the movie uses smoothness to associate cyborgs with aspirational beauty and artificial intelligence. Anna Silver explains, "The movie's director, Forbes, has metaphorically airbrushed the robots to emphasize their status as the literalization of male fantasies. He emphasizes the artificiality of the robots' appearance by bathing their faces in light and filming them in soft focus. In 3 key scenes, the robots are filmed in soft focus, while the humans are filmed in sharp focus. Smoothness is also used as a device to show submissiveness or beautiful non-disruption. In both the book and the 1975 adaptation, Joanna and her friends continuously poke fun at or outright criticize their marital sex life. Specifically in the movie, Walter asks Joanna if she's ever made it in front of a fireplace, to which she responds, a bit sharply, "Not with you." Period. Charmaine, in both the book and the movie, seems disgusted by her husband's advances, telling the other women that he got a rubber suit custom made for her and that he chases her around the bed. As Ann Silver explains, female sexuality in the film is aggressive and disruptive, end quote. But the robots, who are represented by a non-disruptive smoothness, murmur sexual platitudes to their husbands, as Joanna and Bobby discover when they boldly enter a house to hear a woman moaning, "You're the king, Frank. You're the master." The Stepford husbands are quite literally the masters of their wives. They run the show and the business. They are the choreographers of the spectacle, from the wardrobe to the hair to the body to the brain, even down to the women's vocabulary. The Stepford wives don't know the word archaic. They don't know what it means, even if their human selves once did. The husbands don't bother giving them an extensive education, a subtle nod to the fact that knowledge is literally disarming. If the cyborgs somehow gained sentience and realized the nature of their subjugation, they might actually revolt. But the only thing they know how to say is master and wonder maid and yes, but never no. What a price to pay for perfection. Before I deleted TikTok, I watched a video of a person describing themselves as a creature who snuck onto Earth. I had been seeing similar videos for a while at that point. People, usually women, who came to the internet to share their beauty anxiety and the exhaustion it inspired. These people feel so undesirable that they can't even justify their existence. It might seem dramatic or shallow if you're unfamiliar with the feeling, but I understand it greatly. Desirability is treated as the pinnacle of existence. We have been told time and time again that beauty is our only purpose in life. Beauty, which is defined by very narrow concepts. Held up against them, most of us would crumble. To someone struggling heavily with low self-esteem or self-hatred, the theme at the heart of this video may resonate. Maybe you want someone to take the wheel for a little bit, take control over you, so long as they promise to make you perfect in the interim. Stepford Wives or Comfort Me with Apples are horror novels to everyone else. The concept of spawning crystal blue eyes overnight is strange. Maybe to you, these ideas are portals to a much safer world. A world where you lack agency, but at least you're loved. A world where the love is empty, but at least you're beautiful. That's the life of the spectacle. That's the altar at which you're expected to bow. In her 2002 book, Rock My Soul, Black People and Self-Esteem, Bell Hooks argues that self-esteem is critical, not just for Black people, but that is the focus of the book. Without self-esteem, people begin to lose their sense of agency. They feel powerless. Systems of domination exploit folks best when they deprive us of our capacity to experience our own agency and alter our ability to care and to love ourselves and others. There are many ways someone's self-esteem becomes fractured. Systems of discrimination, broadly, distort how we view ourselves. Fat phobia, white supremacy, ableism. But our self-esteem also suffers on an interpersonal basis. We're not only moved by the rejection of a stranger. When we shame ourselves or get shamed by family members or friends, our sense of self becomes strained. Toni Morrison attempted to portray this in The Bluest Eye. Bacola is a representation of someone deemed ugly by our culture, who breaks under the weight of that discrimination. Almost everyone she meets treats her horribly based on her class and her appearance. She has no one, not even family, to help guide her through it. The death of self-esteem can occur quickly, Morrison writes, easily in children, before their ego has legs, so to speak. Couple the vulnerability of youth with indifferent parents, dismissive adults, and a world which, in its languages, laws, and images, reinforces despair, and the journey to destruction is sealed. In Rock My Soul, Bell Hooks presents solutions to our frazzled, appearance-obsessed culture that goes beyond those offered by the spectacle. A lot of these solutions have nothing to do with appearance, nothing to do with, as Olay made reference to in her video, buying into beauty. It has to do with our personhood, our ethics, our actions. It's easier said than done in a culture that prioritizes looks, I'm well aware, but it was a really interesting read. It's not beauty itself that exhausts us. It's the thing or people mediating beauty, controlling it. There's another quote by Toni Morrison where she says that beauty is an absolute necessity. I don't think it's a privilege or an indulgence. It's not even a quest. I think it's almost like knowledge, which is to say, it's what we were born for. I think finding, incorporating, and then representing beauty is what humans do. With or without authorities telling us what it is, I think it would exist in any case. I, for one, have been trying to determine my own principles in relation to beauty, not just those considered the universal truth. What do I consider beautiful? What parts of my life do I want to incorporate beauty into, and how can I do it in a way that feels authentic to me? How can I be patient with it instead of demanding it occur immediately as a desperate desire to fix myself? In other words, how can I be intentional with change? How can I still be me and the things I love still be reflections of me, even after transforming? I ask myself the same thing about ugliness. What has led me to think that something's ugly? How can I challenge that? How can I move towards embracing ugliness or failure on a personal level? I'm trying to let go of the need to control beauty, to dominate and own it against its will and against my own peace. It's a very colonial mindset. Is it enough to recognize beauty in passing? Treat it, as Toni Morrison said, like knowledge instead of a quest. I think exploring gender has also helped me. Deconstructing it and rejecting its narrow concepts has allowed me to view myself as a human and not specifically as a gender, which in turn has transformed my relationship with femininity. Sometimes the evil gnats on my phone try to undo my progress, but otherwise, I can exist as a neutral human who performs wacky femininity because I just happen to think it's fun. I can't dictate any of this for you. In fact, a lot of what I just said might mean nothing to you. That's the whole point of this video. You are your own puppet master, your own creator, your own god. What will you make from this revelation? What will you destroy? There's value in introspection. If there wasn't, the world around us would stop trying to distract us from it. It would stop trying to feed us answers, and it would instead let us try to find out for ourselves. I truly believe that our discomfort teeters on the brink of revolution. Another violent end to these violent delights. If you've watched this far, comment who up questioning their holes. Make sure to like this video and turn on the bell to be notified when the next video essay drops. Subscribe if you want. I don't care. I'm so tired right now. And consider subbing to my Patreon, where I post one exclusive video every month. Please. Please. ThredUp also wants me to remind you that you can shop hundreds of brands for a fraction of the price, all in one place. Tap my link and use code Shakespeare50 to shop my ThredUp faves and receive 50% off your first order, plus free shipping. That's all, folks. Bye.